in this room. With that said, as we talk about some topics tonight, always remember, we can agree to disagree. There are no personal assaults that happen in this room. We're good neighbors. Amen. And so we want to welcome you. We want to welcome you to a new day in Dunnellon. We got to see some stuff last night. Bridges going across rivers, bike trails, all kinds of things that the state is willing to step up to the plate because they love us so much down here in this corner. But we want you tonight to be a part of the next step in this journey as our city expands. We are a tri-county city. Which I call us the jewel. We're the double river jewel right here, Twin Rivers. True. And we have a resource that you'd have to travel far and wide to find it. Anything else like this on earth. So God has truly kissed this place. And as stewards, neighbors, it's our job to make sure that we're respectful of it and do the right thing. So we're trusting our input. With that said, tonight, our historic board, and let me just, first of all, here's some of our neighbors too. They volunteer. This is all their time, their hours, their energy to give to you, to make Dunnellon a better place. And as a neighbor, I would encourage you, if you find out there's some things you would like to volunteer for, we want to accept you. We'd love for you to come help us out. And I'm going to turn it over now to Linda, who's the head of the board. Unlike the council, this will be very quick.
I also welcome you to the historic board. If you'll all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Linda Fernandez. Here. Dave Myers. Here. Viola Soph. Here. Jamie Keel. Here. James Burchett. Marty Bond.
Here.
Lonnie Smith.
Here.
Teresa Malmberg here. The agenda was posted on the city's website and City Hall bulletin board on Tuesday, February 6th.
Okay, the only thing we have on our agenda tonight is the minutes from January 8th, 2019. Have you all had a chance to go over those minutes?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Are there any corrections or additions? All those in favor?
Aye.
And now I would like to turn this meeting over to Allison McGrath, who's going to give the presentation for us tonight. And thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? No. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Allison McGrath. I'm a certified land use planner with Finley Warren. I'd like to take a couple minutes and introduce my team. For those of you that were at our last meeting, a couple weeks ago, you may remember Vincent Spar. He was our fine scribe at the last meeting. Passed out our note cards. And then we also have with us an intern that's new with our office. This is Amanda Lunday. Please extend a warm welcome to Amanda. This is her first public meeting. For those of us that have been in this business for a long time, this is my 25th year. as a certified planner, well, in the planning industry, so I would like to hope that this will not be her last public meeting. But if it is, I guess I'm the only one that's responsible for that, so thank you for coming, I appreciate it. So, how many of you were here at the last meeting that we had? Well, I want to say thank you. Well, you don't count. Come on. That's cheating. You're upping my numbers. But I want to thank all of you that were here at the last meeting for coming back. It's always the true test of, how you did the first time. If folks actually take the time to come back again, it's tough as a planner to engage with the public and to get you to come back. And I really appreciate that. I mentioned at the first meeting that a project like this is really based on the amount of civic engagement that you put into it. So the fact that you've taken another evening out of your schedule, and I just heard that you had another meeting here last night as well, so I will try to be respectful of your time. I will try not to waste your time this evening, and I'm hopeful that you'll come back again for the next meeting that we have about this project. But I want to genuinely thank you for taking the time to come this evening. Now, how many of you took me up on the challenge to bring a friend? A friend that you didn't bring the last time. Thank you. I appreciate you doing that as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know so many of you appreciated the public participation part of the last meeting. So I hope you're all ready to participate this evening, because there will be a lot of that throughout the evening tonight. Just going to go quickly over our agenda. Let me pause for 1 minute. There were some handouts at the back table. You don't need to worry yourself about spending the meeting looking through that unless you find what I have to say extraordinarily boring this evening. Then you have reading material, and it's super, super small print, so it should keep you entertained for the entire 2 hours that we have scheduled for you this evening. But that's really for you to take home. Hopefully we will cover a lot of that throughout this evening. And if it is too small for you to read, we can certainly email it to you. You can get with any one of the three of us or with any of the city staff. Give us your email or other contact information, and we'll make sure that we get you a copy that you can read at your leisure at home. So we're going to do a quick review of the Competitive Florida Partnership Program, because I saw that there were several of you that were not here at the last meeting, may not have been here back a couple months ago when I came and spoke briefly to the council about the meeting. We will talk about what we discussed at the first community conversation meeting, which was a couple of weeks ago. We'll talk about the draft vision. So those of you that participated a couple weeks ago, you remember we filled out little cards and we talked about what you liked about the city of Dunnellon, or how you would characterize Dunnellon. We're going to talk about some priority areas for the city, and then we're going to talk about Dunnellon's assets. It's going to be a large part of the discussion this evening because it feeds into what happens at the next level of this program. Any questions before we go ahead and get started? For those of you that were here the last meeting, I try to like to keep this a very informal process, but kind of structured nonetheless. Feel free to stop and ask me questions along the way. This program is for you as much as it is for me, but at the end of the day, we're trying to put together an economic development strategy that you will use after we're long gone. Okay, so the more you ask me questions, the more you engage, the more we can give you a work product that is a reflection of you and what the city of Dunnellon wants to be as you go forward into the future. So just to recap quickly, the state of Florida created the Competitive Florida Partnership Program several years ago with the goal to really help Florida communities thrive. It's really designed for rural Florida. In particular, the state of Florida recognized that rural Florida was kind of at an economic disadvantage to compete with some of the bigger boys in terms of attracting economic development. That doesn't mean they're trying to mimic the Orlandos, the Miamis. We talked a lot about even Homestead at the last meeting. Those of you that were here might recall that. Nobody here wanted to be Homestead, right? Right? Correct. I think I heard maybe an amen subtly in there, right? No. So the purpose here is really to kind of look at what you have in your community and how you want to leverage those assets to really propel what you have and make them even better and help those, help the things that you really like here to thrive, right? So this is what the program was really founded on. I mentioned already that Vinny and I were here at the last meeting. Amanda threw me a curveball. I didn't know she was coming. I was super impressed that she, at the last minute, volunteered her time to come this evening and took an interest in coming, so I apologize that she's not listed on the slide. And then those of you that were here at the last meeting saw that Josh Askey will be participating in this process. He is your leader, if you will, at the state of Florida. He oversees the Competitive Florida Partnership Program. You will be seeing him if you participate in the asset mapping exercise, which I'll talk about a little bit later this evening. You're still the most important part of this team, even though we're here to provide guidance to you throughout this process. Nothing's going to happen with this overall program after we put the strategy together unless you embrace it and you continue to participate in moving the program forward. There will be tasks that have to happen after we leave, after the report is done. There will be action items, and there will need to be champions of those action items. So be looking out for some of the things that you're passionate about as we go through the next several months of this process, and see if there are things that you identify with that you could embrace, that you could become the task leader for, so that when the economic development strategy is done, you can carry through and help the city to realize those action items. So I mentioned already we had the first community conversation meeting. It's kind of an unusual term. It's a term that's utilized by the state of Florida. And I call it unusual because I've never seen it characterized that way before, but I'm trying to embrace it and I'm starting to embrace it, and I would like for it to be a conversation. I think the last meeting that we had, we achieved that. I felt that there was good public participation at the last meeting. I haven't heard anybody say anything much to me tonight, but we're going to get to that. This is the overall schedule. It's a very compressed schedule. I apologize for that. It's by no fault of the city, and Mayor, I apologize. I want to thank you again for inviting us back this evening. We appreciate the opportunity to serve the city in this regard, so thank you very much. It's a compressed schedule, but the state of Florida was a little tardy in executing the contracts, and unfortunately the way the program works is it has to be completed in May. So we will compress the schedule, we will get everything done that needs to be done in a timely manner, and the city won't suffer for it. We can give you our commitment on that. And the good news is you won't get meeting fatigue, because it'll be like ripping off a Band-Aid. We'll be done before you know it, right? So we'll have the next community conversation meeting on March the 12th. Those of you that were here at the last meeting may notice that that was a date that's different. The schedule changed a little bit. Our partners at the state of Florida flipped the asset mapping exercise date with the community, the third community conversation date. They wanted to have the asset mapping date on March the 20th. So please note your calendars that we will have our third community conversation before the asset mapping exercise. And then we will move into city council workshops, and then the city council final adoption or acceptance of the report meeting. Any questions? No? So at the last meeting, you'll recall that we talked about a boundary. And I had showed some data of population projections and workforce and things like that. Anybody remember? We kind of looked at some of that. And I appreciated the feedback that I received that the community really tries to embrace more of a greater Dunnellon area, right? So Lonnie was kind enough to send me a map of what is typically considered the greater Dunnellon area. And I think Vinny had to pick me up off the floor when I saw what that is. It's a very large area. Unfortunately, given the scope of this project and the time frame in which we have to do it, we just simply can't embrace that entire area for the purposes of this project. Plain and simple, we just can't. So we worked with Lonnie to come up with a 2-mile radius around the current city limits. Hopefully this boundary is acceptable for you for the purposes of this study. It also coincidentally makes a heart with this being Valentine's week. So there is that. We should have shown it in red, but
That's on you.
But for the purposes of this, we're going to use the 2 mile radius for the study area for take it and extend that to the greater Dunnellon area and do this yourself. Okay, so don't feel that just because we're having to stop at this, that once it's done here, you can't go and look at assets that are beyond that once this study's done. But just for the purposes of what we're tasked to do in the time frame that we have to do it, we had to take a manageable boundary. Otherwise, we don't think that we would be able to duly serve the city. So here's some photos of the community conversation meeting number 1. I want to tell you, I mentioned that I've done this for 25 years, and I've done it in communities, we talked a little bit, all over the state of Florida and in other states as well. For a community of this size, and I think Lonnie and I both talked about it the day after, we also talked about it independently with Josh, I've never seen a turnout like what we had at community conversation number 1. So let me just say thank you, really. Mr. Mayor, you should be extraordinarily proud that your folks came out and that this has happened again. It's very, very rare. It's very rare to see that. And again, I'm beyond thrilled that you all come back and accepted my challenge to bring a friend and participate. But this is just fantastic. And Josh, your state partner, was ecstatic about it because for him, what he wants is for you to participate in the asset mapping exercise. And I know those of you that have not been to one of these meetings yet, you're probably like, what is she talking about? I promise you we're going to get to that. And you're going to have more information about it this evening than you probably want, but it's very important that you participate in that exercise, and he was very, very excited that we had that level of participation in this process. So thank you for that. So at the first meeting, we passed out little note cards, and we asked everybody to write down how they see Dunnellon. The good, the bad, the ugly. Don't write your name on it. We don't want to. You can go sit up here if you want. Wow, get a front row. Same price.
Okay.
We get the back row.
All right.
We didn't ask anybody to write their names on. We aren't pitting neighbors against neighbors. You heard the mayor. We're all in this together, right? But we can't put together a good program if we don't recognize that there are faults, or there are flaws, or there are concerns. It can't all just be sugar-coated or whatever. We wanted to hear everything that you felt about it, right? So we went back and read through all of the cards, and we've created this that kind of captured what you feel Dunnellon is. So bear with me, if we read through some of these, you tell me if you can associate with some of these. You don't need to raise your hand. I told you, if you flinch when I say any of these things, then that's your own fault, because then your neighbors will know what you wrote. But so somebody said Dunnellon is afraid of growth. Somebody said Dunnellon is beautiful, which I would have to agree with. It's a diamond in the rough. Somebody said it's mismanaged. Somebody said it's charming. It's family oriented. It's sleepy. It's got potential. All of these things help us to begin to shape not only also the economic development strategy. We all have different opinions, right? But we have to be able to capture all of that in order to be able to put together an economic development strategy that works for everyone. I promise you, and I said this at the last meeting, You are all not going to agree with every action item that comes out of the economic development strategy. You're just not. Our job as professionals is to provide you with a strategy that takes into consideration the different viewpoints that we've heard. We don't have a dog in the fight one way or another. We don't have the tough job of sitting up here. We don't have the tough job of sitting on the Historic Preservation Board or any of the other boards. We're tasked with coming in, listening to the feedback, and presenting you with a plan to move forward. So thank you for providing this feedback. It goes hand in hand with the rest of the comments that we heard, which is what Dunnellon needs. So some of you went further and not only said what Dunnellon currently is, but also what's lacking. And this is extraordinarily helpful to us because it starts to set the stage for some of the action plans that can go into the economic development strategy. So do any of these, you don't need to tell me which ones, but do any of these comments ring true to anybody? Anything on here sound good? Anything on here sound like horrible? Please, Lord, don't let her put that in the strategy. No? All of this can go? We're almost done, guys.
Allison, can you read some of those? They're saying they really can't see them.
First of all, there's plenty of chairs up here. I would encourage you, there are plenty of chairs up here. I would encourage you, those of you that are back there, really not that scary up here. And ladies, come on. Come on, there's You're good? Okay, I will read them, but there are plenty of seats up here. So parking, minority hiring, a community center, seasonal protection, and I had to hyphenate some of these just by virtue of the way the program works. So not necessarily that good zoning should be hyphenated, but and seasonal protection was directly related to comments that we received regarding the tubing on the river. Yes. Dunnellon needs direction. Dunnellon needs better communication, more attention to aesthetics. Somebody just said Dunnellon needs help. That one's a little broad for me, but I'll do my best with trying to figure out what that means. But restaurants and nightlife, that's pretty common when you're talking about economic development strategies. But does that kind of give you an idea of what's in the report? And this will be made available if it's not already on the city's website. I'm not sure if it's posted. I think it's posted. So, and there's copies at the back there if you don't. Somebody put that in there. So I did have a question about that. So if whoever put that in there is here this evening, if you could get with me, not now, I don't want to call you out in front of your friends and neighbors, but I wasn't exactly sure what that is. But shame on me if somebody puts a comment in and I don't reflect that back to you. My job is to make you feel, well, not make you feel. My job is to show you that I'm listening to you. So I didn't want to leave that comment out because one of you took the time to write it down. I just didn't know.
What are you referring to?
Yes, what is the comment? The comment is this rural service center. Somebody wrote that down, that Dunnellon needs a rural service center. I don't know exactly what was intended by that comment, and I don't know, Vinia, if you recall, well, I made a comment about the farmers market and that some of the small communities bring some of the social services agencies to the farmers market and offer those social services all at one location, like at a farmers market, so that they can be distributed to folks that need those services. And I don't know if maybe it was tied together with that comment, but if you are here, or if anybody can shed some light on that and wants to reach out to me after, or email me or call me, I would like some additional clarification on that. So thank you for asking that, but I don't know what was intended by that. So from that, the next challenge for us is to try and draft a vision for you. We talked at the last meeting that the vision is the ability to think about or plan for the future with imagination and wisdom, right? The vision is like, what do you want to be? What's your big thought, right? Different from a strategy. The strategy is your blueprint. The strategy is how are you going to get to your vision. So this is where the first part of public participation comes in, all right? I've done this a long time. You are not going to hurt my feelings, okay? You're not going to, these two, but you guys are not going to hurt my feelings. I took a stab at doing a draft vision for you, and I forgot that you have handouts, so you all have probably already looked at it. But I would like to have comments, and if you two could kind of take some notes from, I would like feedback on if you think that this first draft of the vision captures it. You're shaking your head no.
Well, the first thing that strikes me is it's not taking advantage of Dunnellon's historical significance in the state of Florida. I mean, at one time we were the largest city in the state of Florida.
Okay.
And why are we not taking advantage of that historical aspect of our city? I mean, we have all these visitors that come here, and I know people are concerned about the amount of tours that go down the river, okay? But what happens is they go down the river and then they leave. Why are we not getting some economic benefit other than renting tubes to those people? And it's because we don't have the infrastructure. We're not set up to tell people about the history of Dunnellon.
Okay.
I mean, this is a town that is steeped in history. I mean, steeped. I mean, there was 5 railroads that came in here into this community at one time because of the phosphate mines, okay? And it's a quite colorful history. And if we played upon that idea and kind of built around that idea, there would be a boom once again here in economic growth. This could be a true visitor's destination other than just come float down our river and then leave.
Those are excellent comments, and those are exactly the kind of comments that we're looking for. So I appreciate you sharing that. If you were at the last meeting, both of you were at the last meeting, never heard any comments related to that at the last meeting. So thank you for sharing that.
I would urge you to read the book that is by Mr. Dinkins regarding the city of Dunnellon. It is quite informative about the history of Dunnellon. And I know there was a fellow in here that brought that book up the last time. And as our planning instructor or whatever, particular slant is on the title of what you're doing, whatever it is.
I've been called worse,
I think that would be important for you to understand what the history of this town is.
I would love to read it.
It's not just the confluence of 2 rivers. It's so much more. There's so much more here. And I think in that history is our identity of our town. And if we embrace that, we could take these, and I don't know if this is an accurate number, but I've heard 1.2 million people visit our town annually to use our rivers. But all they're doing is using our rivers.
Right.
Okay? And I think that's what a lot of the town's folks are just angry about. And there's no economic benefit other than the few people, and God bless them for making money off of it. But there should be, we need to capture those people and get them to spend some more money in our town.
Agreed. So I'm hopeful that what comes out of this economic development strategy is exactly that, a reason for people to invest more in your community.
Right. We have these lovely Victorian homes that are
yes.
back here. And there's some businesses in them, and I really don't feel like people use that. I mean, I think I said this the last meeting. We have a colorful history, much like Al Capone and Chicago has, or Fort Worth, Texas, and the Western history that's there is not much different than what we have here. And if you read that book, you can understand what happened here. And there's so many other places that A, we could divert some of the traffic off of the river, because people would come here for things other than that, including our bike trails and our horse trails and our, you know, the nature that's around here. We're just, it doesn't seem to me like there's enough emphasis on that part of our history. It's all about, you know, float down the rainbow or fish on the Withlacoochee.
One, I will commit to you that I will read the book before community conversation number 3. I will make that commit. What's your name?
Rich Brown.
Rich. I will make that commitment to you before the next community conversation meeting. And thank you for sharing your comments. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yes, I'd like to add to that, on the planning commission, when I was exiting, one of my pet things has been just that, the history of Dunnellon, and not having it. You know, once you pass Powell Road on William Street or 41 to the river, all you see is run-down, empty buildings, shanties. It's really not a beautiful sight for somebody coming through town. Even worse as you go past the river and you see partial completed buildings and so on. And so one of my things was, as Mount Dora, Helen, Georgia, a lot of these other towns that I've traveled through, is we have no theme here in this town.
Agreed.
And we were the start of the phosphate industry back in the 1890s. Mr. Ball struck phosphate here, and it created the boom from here all the way to Brooksville. And coming in, one of my fellow past planning commission members, Catherine Burns here, gave me an article, and I think I'd really like to read this, because I think it hits on both what we're looking for here is community design. And it says, this section is intended to identify positive physical attributes in a municipality and provide design goals and policies for planning in specific areas to guide private and public development. A community design section is a relatively new concept for master plans. Most community design plans are prepared for specific areas within a community, such as its downtown or specific transportation corridors. Community design deals with the built environment and its overall appearance, functions, and quality. It seeks to enhance and improve the visual and physical quality of a place through design techniques and architectural treatments. A charrette is an excellent example of practical community design exercise. For more information about this, goes on, but participation in a chariot or similar community design exercise typically results in community design plans which would ideally fit into this section of the master plan. But if you look at Mount Dora or some of these other towns that have a theme, you know, our theme is phosphate. We have nothing in town to show that in our past history, and especially as you travel from Powell Road to the river on 41, our main section of town, it would be great. We have the train depot that is our historical building and has more or less a museum of it in it, but that's the only item along the way that does it. So that would be something I'd like to see, a community design plan added to.
Thank you for sharing those comments. I appreciate that. What's your name?
Wilbur Van White.
Wilbur?
Wilbur.
Wilbur, okay.
Yeah.
So, Benny.
Yep.
Wilbur has just volunteered. Well, don't laugh, Rich, because you just volunteered to head up the historical one. Wilbur has just volunteered to head up the design guidelines action items when we get to that portion in the economic development strategy. You will be the champion of that,
I
right?
am on the board of directors of the Chamber
Okay.
and Business Association, so I'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you very much, because that's exactly what we're going to need for the. It would be perfectly appropriate for us to include action items that encourage the city to host a charrette or a series of charrettes. Does everybody know what a charrette is? No. So you'll come together as a community and you'll take out paper and you will mark on paper what you want your physical community to look like. You will actually design what your theme will be. So it's a little different, it's a lot different than the text portion that we're putting together here through the, I've got this woman first and then I'll come to you, thank you. It's different than the text portion that we'll put here. It becomes the pretty pictures of how your buildings will look. But I would encourage you to do that and be happy to include action items that push you in that direction based on that. And we can include that in the strategy. So thank you for sharing that. Appreciate
If I
that.
could just piggyback on what he was saying, you know.
Quick,
if
because
we-
you're making me hold this young lady up back here.
Well, if we could design the buildings, and every building, you know, the inside of the building doesn't matter, but the outside of the building, if it went along with the motif
Understand.
of what, you know, the boomtown era was here, the town would look a lot better.
Yeah.
And that, and to his point, when you drive through this town, there's a lot of things that you kind of go, ew.
If I go back a couple slides, or if you flip back a couple pages in your handout, one of the comments that we captured from you at the last meeting was aesthetics. So somebody, and I didn't repeat, several of you said a lot of the same things, but I didn't repeat them on the maps, but aesthetics was a common theme. So that will wind its way into this report. So thank you for sharing that. Ma'am?
My name is Evelyn Pelton Peterson. I was born and raised in Wildwood, Florida. It was the railroad hub of Central Florida. It was a seaboard railroad. It had shops. It had, and nothing's permanent but change. Would you agree? Yes. We lost everything in Wildwood, and it was way back in the 40s. I used to have to come over here. And I entered this park when it was beautiful in the 40s and 50s. I courted there. And it was beautiful on Valentine's Day. Anyway, I want to tell you something. I asked them there, I wrote that sub, talked about the historical thing. I asked them, here lately, I've been there, I said, what happened to our little submarines? It was an attraction. They said it's in storage and we can't afford to have it anymore. And I thought, wait a minute, there's old restoration grants. I mean, this was later. Nothing is permanent change, and change is very painful. We don't want this place to grow, but like these historical society, we've got to do it the right way. Right. You ask a question, dear. What do we have here? We've got a depot. Williston got a beautiful park from some grant or something. Have you been there? Beautiful place. Williston. From here to Williston on the right is something going with weeding away. I want the history of that charcoal factory. There's some of the most unique ovens there. Trees all around them. Why can't we get grants to restore and don't lose our railroad hub that you mentioned? We got a depot. We got Crystal River,
Miss Evelyn,
nuclear plant.
You're jumping ahead in my program for tonight. You're jumping ahead.
No.
I'm coming back to you. Would you mind if I respectfully asked you to hold your thoughts for a couple more slides?
We got on that railroad track before they tear it up and almost.
I promise you, when we get to this portion of the program, I will start with you.
And they will pass them through.
Would you mind if I respectfully? I will start with you.
Since you call me a young lady.
I will start with you. Remind me.
Yeah, I'm not gonna let you.
Thank you. Gentlemen. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
My name is Gordon Hart. And
Gordon.
I would like to see some future development that had a little bit of culture involved. The one thing we were lacking in the world-class city apparently was a Taco Bell. So they're building out, up every vacant spot they can find with fast food restaurants, and that's exactly why people come and ride twos. and then don't go anywhere else. All I gotta do is go to the drive-through window and away they go with their stuff, and we end up with the trash on the side of the road.
Thank you for your comments. This woman had her hand up, gentleman in the back, and then I'll come to you. Ma'am?
Yeah, my name is Jan Cuppage. I'm a retired educator, still working as a non-contracted employee. There's one of my fellow educators here. There's a little disconnect in our community between the young people, and all of you here are talking about history of Dunnellon and so on. What you're usually thinking about is people that come and laissez-faire when you walk the streets. Well, we have this other population in Marion County that want to get up and do things, younger people. And I think there's a very big disconnect in this community between us and what we think, how we should draw people, and people who are visiting Marion County during the winter months. If I could change this vision, I would make it a little bit stronger, and then I'll tell you why. It says within the vision, we would strive to offer its residents and visitors opportunities to enjoy the outdoors. I would like to really strive to offer with aggressive outreach. We are horse capital of the United States of America. Would anybody like to guess how many horses right now are in Marion County? And about 20% of those horses are winter residents, and they bring their owners and trainers and employees with them. Anybody want to guess how many horses? The Ocala, their development council, did a survey last year, and it knocked our socks off, literally. 50,000 horses. Our hit show brings thousands of horses, and probably they've estimated $20 million to Marion County's economic development. And most of the people are staying in Ocala. We have the biggest equestrian showplace in America under construction. Okay, they're going to stay with 4,000 horses on the ground. They're going to have 4 stadiums, stadium seating, boxes, restaurants, cafes, and so on. And none of those people who are going to be coming to the county are poor people, and they're younger people. They're the younger set. They don't know about Dunnellon. They don't. So we need to, get aggressive on getting Dunnellon on the map, even within our own county. Those people also come from other nations. We serve equestrian Olympic teams from 5 nations. Those people have money, and they're not being offered information about particularly our sports like biking, the fact that you can do long distance biking, hiking, trail riding, and so on. We don't have the outreach even within our own community, and even outside of our state. If you cross from Georgia into Florida and stop at the Florida Visitor Center, there is not a brochure or nothing for Dunnellon. I keep looking for it every time I cross the state line. It does not exist. There are outdoor enthusiast magazines out there. If we placed a 1x1 inch ad in the classifieds, we have a very weak website. It has no links to all of our amenities for outdoors enthusiasts. Okay, those people would be long-term guests and so on. Because it also, I could go on and on, but we really need to move on in that respect.
You said your name was Jan?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. One of the things that will come out of this report will be recommended linkages for connecting the city of Dunnellon to other resources within the state. For example, Visit Florida, whereby you can put your tourism pamphlets. It can be an action item, and I'm thinking Jan may be volunteering to head up our tourism category, if you would, if I can put you down for that.
Yeah, I'm thinking that Julie and I.
We'll get into more detail.
Yeah.
There's gonna be lots more of this at the next meeting. I don't wanna scare you from coming to community conversation number 3, but there will be lots more of that. But thank you for your comments. I have a gentleman back here, I have a gentleman here, and then I've got you back in the back corner. Sir.
Yes, I'm Dwight.
Dwight?
We covered a lot of territory already.
Yes.
Up at Romeo, the charcoal mill she was referring to,
Right.
that's, we cut out all the blackjack oaks was the fuel for that. That is a neat facility.
Right, it is. Right.
It's cool looking, but that's a common theme throughout our history is using up the resources, and that's everything. The underwater boats, they are still there. They're derelict, they've been sitting there 60 years. What folks don't understand is we couldn't use them anyway because the river is lower than it was in the 60s, and there's not enough water in the head springs to run them now anyway, but they are there. Now, as far as the phosphate history, we do have a fascinating history here. We do a lot of work at the Historical Society. To be honest, some of it is so that if outsiders come in, we can sanitize it because it was a really, really wild place. And we do a lot of work so that if outsiders come in and write our history, we can steer them the way we want to. I mean, it was a really wild place, but it's all true. Now, as far as trying to recreate it and build buildings, I mean, it's a great idea, but that's costly. A lot of what we have now is a legacy of that era. And it might be more efficient to use some of the green space that we have that is still left over from that era and turn them into parks. And they're there, I mean, they're out there, I know where they're at, I've lived here all of my life. There's some really nice places that are not built over because of issues going all the way back from that era. There's a 100-acre pit within a 2-mile radius that could be like Appalachian Trail hiking, only in reverse, going down into the ground. It's not usable to develop unless you do a black diamond kind of golf course. There's a derelict subdivision in town that's a beautiful piece of property that no one knows about that I would like to offer to you folks when they come from town. And there's a place right in the middle of town that's of size that was the wash pit. The old timers call it the mud pit. It could make a really nice park. It's not useful for anything else. And that could be our legacy to make use of those valuable things that can't really be used for anything else.
Dwight, I'm going to do the same thing, respectfully, I'm going to do the same thing I did to Miss Evelyn and ask you if we could just pause this conversation for 1 minute and just focus on the vision, because we are going to go through the exercise of identifying some of the fine assets that you have here. And Amanda and Vinny are going to log those assets. But that's an actual portion of the presentation tonight, but those are the exact things that we want to capture. But we really need to kind of focus on the vision. This was just our first stab at it. We've got a couple of comments here already directly related to the vision. I'm hoping that you two have comments related to the vision. If it's more asset inventory, let me know and we'll do it with the asset inventory, or if it's unrelated to the vision.
It's unrelated to
either?
inventory.
It's
Unrelated to inventory.
Is it related to the vision?
I think so.
Okay, please.
My name is Marty Mohan, born and raised in a little town in Pennsylvania, noted for anthracite coal. Back in the 10s and the 20s and the 30s, coal was king. You either worked on, the men either worked in the coal mines or the railroad to pull the coal out of the ground. My father, luckily, was a railroader. The wives of all of those men who were working underground or in steam engines were making dresses on the second floors of all of the buildings in the downtown area. Boom. Yeah, boom is true for Pittston as it was for Dunnellon. And then the coal industry stopped when some greedy people decided it would be a good idea to mine all that hard coal from underneath the river. And the river opened up, and it filled the mines, ruined the industry. We went from boom to bust. The downtown got dilapidated. I was on the redevelopment authority for 30 years. We tried our best to be able to bring it back as we could. But when you're dealing with buildings that have 100-year-old electricity, there were fires, it was just a total disaster. We had a mayor with vision. He came in, we had a theme. We had thoughts like this, like how do you want the town to look? And little at a time, one building at a time. And partnered with businesses, people that do this for a living. And they bought the buildings, they rehabbed them, and then someone go in and make a store, and they're living above it. And it spread in all sorts of directions. It's the most quaint little town you'd ever be able to see in your entire life. And Dunnellon can do the same thing. The question is, how do you get people to come and see the deep history? Well, I've been living here now for 4 years, and I'm hearing more about the history now than I did for anything. But it's kind of like the field of dreams. You build it and they'll come. You can't expect someone to drive through here with a tube and expect them they're going to stop and say, wow, phosphate, let's talk. And it's just not going to. But you can really slow people down when they're coming through. Let them look at those buildings that are on your main street on both sides, or even spreading off into residential areas, and give them a reason to stop. Whether it's a knick-knack shop or enhance your restaurateurs, see if they can do something out on the street to be able to just make it charming, people will stop. And they're going to tell their friends. And your message is going to get out.
Mark, thank you for your comments.
Sounds like we got 3 on the committee now.
That's right. This is exactly, yes, sir. This is exactly where your action plan for your economic development strategy comes in, and this is exactly where you being engaged and going out into the community and garnering the support of your friends and your neighbors is what's going to make the difference. So thank you very much for your comments. Yes, sir. The last one, and then I think we're probably going to move on to the next segment.
If I recall, the question was, what's right or wrong or what have you with your statement. And
yeah, not right or wrong.
Okay. Correct, incorrect?
Comments.
Comments I can make on it. Well, it's very optimistic, and I think that it's completely inaccurate. It really needs to say that it strives hard not to provide access for residents and visitors in the area, and this is the problem. So, I just want this would conclude the feel-good portion of the meeting, I suppose. Dunnellon's history now, the past 30 years, this is the 3rd visioning I've been involved in. We always reach the same conclusion. We never follow through with it, because the truth is the vast majority of the people are here this evening to make sure that that doesn't happen. So
that what doesn't happen?
That ecotourism doesn't happen. Most of the people
I agree with what he said.
Are retirees. They're not really concerned about business. There's very few business people here tonight. I'm very upset that there's wasn't any effort. We talked about the future of Dunnellon. I see a gentleman from high school here. All right, if anybody under 50? All right, so the vast majority not under 50. A lot of the visionings I've been involved in, we brought in high school students because they are, in fact, the future, right? A lot of the people that are here are transplants as well. They're retired, so they don't really have grandchildren in the school system. They don't have sons that are working in a local factory or what have you. So they're not very invested.
I think that's the statement that last man in Dunnellon theory. Everybody that moves here doesn't want it to change because they want it to be just as it is.
Right.
And that's what I tried to point out the last meeting. Growth is coming. You can either control it and make an identity, or you can stick your head in the sand and pretend like there's nobody else going to move here. But they're moving here, and traffic's coming through.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do with it?
I'm not agreeing with that. I'm saying that that's been my frustration over the years, is that while we say we're for ecotourism, we're actually working hard
to stop it,
especially when it's anywhere near the docks of
Right.
council members that
Right,
live on the
exactly.
river, which is your greatest asset, is our rivers.
What's your name, sir?
Jerry Bond.
Jared. So it's almost like you've peeked ahead at the agenda for community conversation number 3. because community conversation number 3 is centered around stakeholder engagement, which includes reaching out to the next generation to have them participate in the long-term action plan for how we implement the economic development strategy. So I appreciate your comments, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to prove you wrong, that this is an economic development strategy that will sit on the shelf. So I thank you for your comments, and I will take your challenge. Last comment, and then we're going to move on. Yeah.
In regard to the vision that you have on the board of maintaining a small town charm but protecting natural resources for future generations, I think you are right on. Regardless of how we make a theme that goes along with that, sustainability and our natural resources have been the brand here for quite a while. And those are brands that we are trying not only to enforce, but we see them on our welcome signs now as we come into the city. We see them at our parks. We talk about them when we talk about the TPO and our bicycle trails. And I don't think that just because we would like a theme and we would like development that would be quaint, that we need to neglect what you have already written, because without the Rainbow River, without the Coochie, there would not be people coming. And in my most recent past, when I was working, I was selling to people who had never been to this area in the past. I was selling homes, which is definitely a form of development, I think we could all agree. And when they came here, what they were most interested in was a natural place to call home, something that was unique, someplace where in their leisure time they could take advantage of what we had here. So I congratulate you, as I remember the last meeting, when there were people who did speak to the sustainability of our resources, because that is a beauty. And I wanted to throw my hat out to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. I'm going to take what we've heard here this evening and work on trying to refine this again. And you will see it at community conversation number 3, and we'll do this again.
You can maybe just adding historical Dunnellon to that. You know, the word historical in the beginning. It would just add that in there, that we do have a history.
Thank you. Thank you. I was here for that presentation. It was fantastic. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about that. Yeah. Oh, I was here that night. That was the night that I gave a brief presentation to the city council, and I was more excited about that presentation than I was about my presentation about this program. So. He passed me a brochure for those of you that didn't see on the Rockridge Phosphate Trail. So it's, if you aren't familiar with it, I would encourage you to take a look at it. But I suspect you're all well aware of it, and it's pretty cool. Okay, so moving on to the next portion of our public participation component, we're going to talk about your community assets. Miss Evelyn, get ready. I'm coming to you soon. I'm coming to you. Good. So assets. So the assets in your community, your assets are what you consider the quality of life in your community. It's everything from physical structures like you see listed here to your rivers, to your lakes, to your parks, to your leadership, to your institutions, your places of worship, anything in your community that you value. The state of Florida, other states consider your assets. So as we go through this program, you heard me mention earlier that we're trying to help you leverage your assets. You don't want to be Williston, right? You don't want us to take the economic development strategy that Williston has and just plop it down here and do the exact same thing that Williston has, right? You don't want to be Ocala, right? We talked about Homestead earlier. You don't want to be Homestead. You don't want to be, Frostproof has done one of these programs. You don't want to be anywhere else. You are unique. We've talked about that all evening this evening. This community has its own unique assets. So why not build off of the assets that you currently have and use those to your advantage? So what we need to do in order to be able to leverage them or use them is to identify them. So that's what we're going to move into here. I mentioned the handout that's at the back for those of you that have supersonic sight. It's not me. You can take a look at those, or as I mentioned, we can provide those to you at a later point in time. Amanda is responsible for putting that wonderful list together. I think she should get a little round of applause for the time and effort she did a great job trying to capture the things that she felt were in your community. But again, we aren't from here, so I don't want to rely on that solely, and I don't want you to just necessarily go through there and pick it apart tonight and say this isn't there, this isn't there. I would like to just hear from you what assets you consider important. It does a number of things. One, it makes us kind of truth what we've pulled together, and it also helps us to start prioritizing the things that you find important. Does that make sense? So why we're doing this exercise is because you heard me say that the state of Florida is coming here. The state's coming. On March the 20th, which is the new date that the state has set for us, from 2:30 until 6 o'clock, several representatives from different state agencies are going to come to Dunnellon, and we are going to divide into groups of 5 or 6 people, and we are going to each be given a list of probably, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 or 10 different assets in your community to go and visit. And each group will have representatives of the community, it'll have some of us, and it'll have representatives from various state agencies and some federal agencies. The Department of Agriculture is always really excited about participating in this exercise, which I find very interesting, but, because it's a state program. But and I don't mean doesn't matter. So they will come down and they will divide up, and so the historical resources, the folks from the State Department of Historic Preservation will go and look at the historical resources. So you'll have experts that are specifically interested and knowledgeable about those resources that will go to those assets. And you will go and interview managers at those facilities, and you will also do photographs of those facilities, and you will also kind of inventory, just do a site assessment. Is the lighting good? Do you feel safe in the environment? Is the parking adequate? Is the parking safe? There's a list of questions that the state will provide to you. And it helps the state to be able to look at it and help suggest improvements, and also help with the linkages that I was mentioning earlier between other resources like the Visit Florida Tourism Agency, for example, and other such resources where you can get funding and get Dunnellon out there and on the map. So that's what's going to happen on March the 20th. It's a very fun afternoon. I've participated in this before. Yes, ma'am? I almost didn't see you. I'm sorry.
Is this going to be just for the assets in the city limits of Dunnellon? Because I know we talked about the assets. You can get funding only for assets within the city of Dunnellon, where we have so many, we also have so many great assets, Citrus, Marion, Levy County, within a 10-mile radius.
Right. So what we're going to capture here this evening is probably going to extend beyond the 2-mile radius that I showed on that map earlier. But probably what will happen when the state comes is we probably won't go beyond the 2-mile radius, just because we won't have the time. There just physically is not enough time in the course that the state gives us to do this. Were you here earlier when I talked about it? Once we're done with this exercise, the community can replicate it and go beyond the 2-mile radius No. Oh, yeah, so we drew a boundary with the heart around the city limits. It's, it just coincidentally ended up being a heart. It's towards the beginning of the presentation. But, yes,
I have
Jen?
a question. Will there be a representative on that panel visiting from DEP?
I don't have any control over who comes. It's set up by the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, and it's really based on who's available to come. So I don't know. That's all up to the State Department of Economic Opportunity. I can certainly ask Josh. I can make a note to. Did you want to? I can ask Josh if there's a special request for DEP.
What is DEP?
I'm sorry, the Department of Environmental Protection.
I'd like to make a strong recommendation to extend the 2 miles, at least for something like the Head Springs at the state park. That's outside the 2 mile range, but they have to visit that to see an idea of what we have.
Agreed.
How far? I don't know.
I don't know the exact state limits.
4 miles.
4 miles. That's the Head Springs State Park. It's
pretty much the heart of
the
everybody's
city.
talking about.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say without the head
That's
springs,
where
there's
the
no.
theme park. It was bigger than Disney before Disney got here.
The problem, I can put it on the list. The state will actually pick the resources that we go visit. I'll asterisk it for you.
If you don't visit there, you haven't visited Dunnellon.
If you don't visit there, goodbye.
Because the river flows from there.
I will note it. I will tell you though that the resources that become available to the city won't extend beyond the city limits of the city of Dunnellon. So you just need to keep that in mind. So any funding opportunities that you have, you know, won't extend beyond the city limits of the city of Dunnellon. So just because it's from this.
This is part of the problem. You have 8,000 people that live inside Dunnellon proper. Yeah, if that. And of that, and forgive me if you live in Blue Cove, but Blue Cove has run this town, my understanding is, since time and honorarium in modern days. Okay? And they're the people that want to stop the development. Okay? And that is why we have things like Hardee's and Taco Bell and KFC and Burger King and or Wendy's and the other things of this development that
I'm
is
sorry,
not.
can we not have a lot of chatter? I think we kind of just need to be respectful of Rich speaking, and everybody has their turn, if you please.
You know, that's what's stopping proper growth in this town, is because it's so confined to such a minimal number of people, even though, as we mentioned the last meeting, you're serving a community of almost 35,000 people. But because there's this less than 8,000 number in Dunnellon proper, only things happen there. And then my understanding is there's been numerous lawsuits to stop anything that's ever been tried in the past from that one little source right there, because those people don't want to mess up their view. And they're tired of people jumping on their lawns and doing things. And I can appreciate that. If I spent $500,000 on a piece of property in Blue Cove, I wouldn't want people jumping up on my property either. Okay, but that's the crux of the issue here. It's why there's been so many plans, to that gentleman's point back there, why things never happen in this town. It's why we are an undeveloped resource.
Well, I appreciate both of your comments, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Jeff Gaskin.
Jeff, okay. I will, when I call Josh to make the DEP request, I will add that to the Head Springs, to my conversation for Josh.
Because, yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
It was a theme park, and it was as big as Disney until they made the highway interstate.
I just know from my experience in working with Josh before, he really tries to keep it contained because they only give us such a short amount of time for them to visit, and it is a common frustration in other communities as well. But that one in particular, given what you have just said to me, I will make that request of Josh. Thank you. There weren't any more questions that I was holding on, right? Okay. So strategy. So this is what we'll move into then. This is what will come out of the asset mapping. Once we understand what your assets are, then we can actually sit down and begin crafting an actual strategy for you. This is your how-to. This is your blueprint. right? This is your action plan. This is gonna have short, medium, and long-term goals. This is gonna have specific action. I've got a number of volunteers already this evening to head up some specific topics, and I appreciate you donating your time. I hope I'll see all of you at the next community conversation meeting, and that I haven't completely scared you all away. But
Do you want to go back into the asset list?
yeah, I completely just jumped over the overall asset list, didn't I? Miss Evelyn, you're up. So here's what we're gonna do. Thanks, Vinny, because all of a sudden the meeting was gonna be over, right? So here's what we're gonna do. We are going to start inventorying your assets. I mean, Amanda has done a great job putting pen to paper and trying to identify what's in your community. But we're going to start with Miss Evelyn, because I promised her that we would, and then we're going to jump back here to Dwight, and then we're going to... Wait, no, I'm pretty good with names. I would have got there. We're going to come to Jerry. Please don't give me any more right now, but we're going to start identifying some of the assets, and let's not try and hit the same ones. So, because in the interest of time, I think we're scheduled till 7:30. 7:30. So you'll find that I'm a start on time and end on time. I try to be respectful of everybody's time. So Miss Evelyn, if you could give us like a handful of the assets.
Okay.
Let's limit everybody to 5 assets at the most. Okay, and then you can contact me personally after. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Are we aware that we have our school system? I'm a retired teacher too.
Just the assets, Evelyn, not the history.
We have produced several good ball players that have turned pro. We need a big film thing to show and have those boys interviewed. Everyone wants Dan Rather. I watched Dan Rather.
Miss Evelyn, come on. We're going to be done at 7:30.
We got the boys. We got 2 Quilters Guild. We have an art studio. We have the railroad. We have the parking for getting to the depot. Catch it here. Ride both ways and back like North Carolina's got. We have got a 90-year-old First Beauty queen. She was a queen on our floats the other day. Leela Evers. We've got the Dinkins families. We've got the, I read it in an Ocala magazine about the Collins family history. And why can't some of their people be interviewed, brought in on a big screen when the people stop here to catch our train?
Thank you.
And if you want them to keep going, send them to Williston. I love what you said. We're a tri-county, you know, we're trying to develop the
I think Mr. Mayor said that.
I'll pick that up. That's great for that train to do. It'll help us out. Don't let that train leave Dunnellon.
Thank you, Miss Evelyn.
What did you say right before the art studio, Evelyn?
What?
Quilting Guild.
Quilting Guild.
The Guild. We got you.
We got
You mentioned the Guild.
And they give away quilts.
Right, Quilting Guild.
I mean, they are professional.
Thank you very much. Thank
Visit
you.
the art studio. It's great.
Dwight.
Yeah, I don't know what she has to say. Leela May is an asset to our
She
town.
is. You don't see her in a baby.
She's the 90-year-old beauty.
Leela has a funny little way.
Dwight, anything else?
I'll reiterate, a lot of our assets are a legacy of the phosphate era. Not a lot of the buildings are here, because they all put them up in a year and they were wooden buildings. And our town has been in transition ever since. Our business district, no one even knows where it is. It's just gone. I mean, very few people even know where the original business district was. But our real assets are a legacy of that. We had railroads. We were like a railroad hub. And there was actually one south of town. And we've utilized that with one of the rails to trails. We have another one that goes to Chiefland. And I know the state is working on that. But there is another one that the right-of-way is not there but a lot of the grade is still there. I've done some of the due diligence on this. There is a way where we could triangulate the whole town with rails to trails. And instead of advertising our website, we could get people here just by making them go from place to place through town. And we don't have to advertise it, people come. There is a way by using the legacy of the barge canal and the railroads that were here and put the people where we want them and bring in the right type of people. I have a business that I deal with these eco-tourists. And, you know, you talk about the tubers. We get a lot of tubers, and you'll have, you know, I have a place on the river I deal with. It's not very realistic to try and monetize the tubers much anymore. They get out in town, they've been on the river 4 hours, 20% of them are hammered anyway, so there's not much more they're gonna do. They're gonna go home. The eco-tourists will want to bring in $4,000 bicycles, they have kayaks on top. I mean, look around and you see it. These people stay a long time, and they spend a lot of money here, and they're good citizens. And we have everything for them because of the barge canal, and because of the railroads, and the rails to trails that we have, and the more existing opportunities. I could take you in the woods and show you where the old grades are, and some of it's doable. You know, we're spending the state's money, so we could, you know, the opportunity is there. And I can't tell you where it's at, but I can take you folks out there and show you some real opportunities.
Okay. Maybe I'll get your contact information after. I'm going to go to Jerry, and then.
Yeah, actually, they pretty much got me on the rails thing, but I do want to point out the geography of those rails is kind of unique. It runs both through the state park and through downtown and right past our depot to the other river. So you've got a great potential rail line there to move tubers, kayakers, bicyclists, what have you, from the city and your commercial district to the state park. A few years ago, there was a study out. The state does a study every 2 years on the economic impact of
right. We talked about it at the last meeting, right?
Right. Per capita, Rainbow Springs State Park puts out considerably less than what other states throughout the city, or I'm sorry, other parks throughout the state do, because there's no connectivity between the two. And we have a rail line that can just connect the city to the state park. The other thing that we are a confluence of two rivers, not just any two rivers, but two very unique rivers. I'm not going to say natural because neither one of them are. They have a dam on them, so there's a little bit less than natural. But they are two very unique rivers, one being a northerly flowing river, and so forth. So that's all I have.
Thank you for your comments. Sir.
This area is a premier area for birders. I mean, the assets are for birding here and bird and wildlife photography are almost balanced. It's a neglected aspect of this area. But Lake Rousseau, Rainbow River, and Wood Ridge River are major rivers for a wide variety of waterbirds, and some very rare ones. And I think, you know, if we push that asset, birders spend a lot of money.
Sure do, sure do.
I mean, I can attest to that. I have folks that pay me a lot of money to come and stay for 2 months. They bring their camera and kayak, the river. And another thing we have is there's folks that come, if you watch the river that race the kayaks, we need to cater to them. Those are the folks, I mean, they have $4,000, $5,000 canoes. They're high-end folks. We want them. Nothing against the tubers, but the tubers were never going to spend $4,000 on a tail. They're never going to spend that money. These folks that travel from a long way away and bring the expensive toys will.
Thank you. I've got this gentleman, this woman in the back, Jan, gentleman. Oh, I almost got you. Hi.
My name's Kevin. I think we need, one of our assets could be youth development.
Youth development.
Youth development. And I say this because I know a lot of people in this room, but youth development, if you guys are an asset, all right? We are losing young people left and right out of these high schools. They leave and they never come back. Now, if you really think about why, there's nothing here, all right? But they don't want to start a business. I bet you there's plenty of business owners in this room. So that connection with that youth development, you know, a young man right now, he figured out how to advertise for small businesses on the internet. And I know nobody, maybe you don't use Snapchat and Instagram, things like that. Turn that business to $1 million business, but he's in Ocala. and so that's what I wanted to say, youth development, because you got all the right pieces in this room right now.
And we got our champion for our youth.
And he
workforce.
Yeah, he's like, he's another one of our assets over here.
Thank you, Kevin.
Agreed.
Thank you. Great comment. Great comment. Ma'am.
Just as some of the assets that we have in Dunnellon that, you know, might not be on your list, I did see Dunnellon Presbyterian Church. It's one of the oldest churches in town. But there's the Bot Springs house. That in Bot Springs is where phosphate was supposedly stories that I've been told. Wife can correct me, but phosphate was founded over in Bot Springs.
Can you spell that for me?
B-O-G-T. Some people pronounce it vote, but we here in Dunnellon pronounce it bot. And it's a natural spring. It flows out into the Withlacoochee River. It's in the 2 miles. It's in the city limits of Dunnellon. But it's the old bot house, and I was always told that it was a carriage stop. And if the lights were on, that's where they'd stop and those types of things. So that's an asset. Is that wrong?
Yeah, that's one of the assets. I wasn't gonna attach my name to that, because the same folks have owned it since 1903. But it's a really, it's almost comparable to the Marjorie Tenen Rollins house as far as historic value.
It's in my
And it's
backyard.
got an amazing history. The guy that lived there was one of the most charismatic and colorful characters in that period of Florida history. No, it's not much is known about him, it's just not advertised. It really needs to be preserved. And I was gonna take you folks there, but I didn't wanna advertise. It's a small town, and, you know, we know why it is the way that it is. But it should be, it deserves to be preserved. I mean, it's got an amazing story.
And the last one that I want to say was our Dinkin Speed store. Sadly, it's vacant now, but Dinkin Speed store would make, I've always wanted to do like a brewery there, or a great upscale, make like life, so there's part A. But, you know, or make that quaint restaurant with the knickknacks, the local history that could be there as well. And it's just an asset that I wish someone would purchase and do my vision of a brewery.
Jan? Thank you for, I'm sorry, what was your name? Valerie, thank you. Jan?
Directly related to your conversation is needed cultural arts center here, performance center. And we have so much.
We're talking about your existing assets,
Yeah,
right? So you have a cultural arts center?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Okay, our young people in our area won't stay around here because there's no way to express, you know, what they have to offer.
Right.
But the other thing is, you tie it into an eatery. I've seen it happen in other towns. You tie in an eatery to a cultural arts performance center, and you have a big thing going on. People will come from out of town. And so on. The other thing is, I have a magazine here called Outsiders. And again, the outreach, and we were talking about the railways and so on. Here's a magazine, I don't know, 500,000 young people get this magazine, but the reason I asked about DEP coming, here's the deal. The tuber season is how many months, folks? How many months?
5 too long?
No, it's not 5 too long, because those people come in here and they spend money, you know, at our restaurants. They do. I see them there all the time. I have great conversations with those people who come to our eateries, our upper level eateries, okay? And those people are here tonight, they'll tell you who's filling those restaurants. Our two restaurants, talk about assets, there are two huge restaurants we have on our rivers. People, those parking lots, you can't get into them, okay? Especially during the tuber season. Okay, we can extend that tourism season with an association with the DEP. As a neighbor of the state park, my husband and I are invited every 3 years to a meeting at the park, and they ask us, well, we're neighbors, what would you like to see? And tying in what Kevin said, more employment for our young people. Even if they don't stay here and work, they're going to college and commuting, they need jobs. Okay, they need jobs while they're getting their education. That's how most of us got our education. Those other months, somebody do the math, I'm not good at, but 7 months that the tubers aren't coming into the river, there's a huge asset. And I talked with DEP, and they just kind of like, not our turn. They have just bought 260 acres, the Rainbow River Ranch, which is in our 2 mile, your map there for economic development assessment. They have no plans, okay? Here's the deal, what could be done is take that tubing parking lot, all the facilities they have there, the restroom, the little visiting center and so on. The Cal Mountain Bike Club has offered to volunteer to take all the trails in the park, the existing trails, including the ones on the raised trail beds. It's beautiful in there. People don't have any idea what is in there. And now they have the 250 acres. They could have the biggest mountain biking trail course in the south and south. And somebody mentioned $4,000 bikes. People in Ocala got them, okay? And they bring the Pedro Trail on the Greenway. You cannot get into that lot on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, or a Monday. People come from all over the country in the winter to go mountain biking. It sounds weird, there's no mountains out there, but there's mountain bike trails. We bring them on here.
Thank you for your comments. Rich?
I didn't, what was that, what's your name?
Jan.
Jan.
Let me
Jan brought up
introduce you.
a great point earlier, and I'm a horseman, and I have horses. A stable.
And I
I think it was modified at some point, and so it's not part of the historical district. Do you know anything about that?
No.
Okay.
It is in the
The
district.
history of it is that something happened and it was bypassed, it's not part of Dunnellon history, even though it is all of Dunnellon history. So that might be revisited.
They're saying it is in the historic district.
The house itself?
Yes,
Oh, it
please.
is.
We have a spectacular piece of undeveloped property just a few blocks west of here, sometimes referred to as 9 Island Cove, and it is within our CRA district. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity for some sort of ecotourism related sort of thing. And I'm not certain, but it's my impression that it's one of several corridors being considered for extending toll highway through here. And I think that would really be a disastrous loss for our community.
Sir, thank you.
Just a couple of assets. There is a fine arts center in the old library building in Dunnellon, and it's very high art. It's quite a good attraction.
Is that the same one Ms. Evelyn was talking about? Okay.
Okay. And the other is KP Hall County Park.
Yes.
Within your
Saw it today, yes.
We got
Thank
the
you.
airplanes too, those airplanes out past me.
Radio control.
Remind me your name, please. Anita, thank you.
One of the things that come to mind to me as an asset is our Dunnellon Public Library.
Okay.
And at the public library, you have other services. People that don't have a GED, they can go there, take GED classes. I mean, people who are looking for employment, they have a career source presence to get help looking for employment. So those are the things that come to mind to me as assets.
Great point, thank you.
And it's not, it's fully advertised.
Thank you.
You had asked about rural service centers.
Yes.
I didn't know what that was, and I believe they may have been referring to a USDA rural service.
Oh, okay.
Now, with us being in agriculture, when I have to go to like NRCS or for some kind of USDA thing, we have to travel all the way up.
Yeah.
Really far.
Ocala, okay.
Jacksonville Road and such. But like, if you're in ag, and even if, you know, ag is transitioning to more niche agriculture or, you know, horses and whatever, USDA service centers can offer things, NRCS can offer things, and they even help with rural housing and such. I mean, I know that's federal, USDA and NRCS, but it would really help. Now, maybe not particularly me, but the area, if we're gonna keep agriculture here in any sort of form, and it's related to the ecotourism stuff, things too, to have a more accessible, USDA service center.
So you may recall, like, I don't know, 20 minutes ago when I stopped mid-sentence and I couldn't remember what I was gonna say about the Department of Ag. Because the Department of Ag is a state agency, it was USDA usually participates in the asset mapping exercise.
USDA?
Yes, that's what I couldn't think of, so thank you.
I can talk to you about maybe on the March 20th thing, communicating some with the ag agencies and.
I don't set that up. The Florida Department of Economic Opportunity coordinates with all the agencies that participate in the event.
One of the things, just, we have this.
Listen, you only gave me one thing. You only told me the library.
You can come when I give you the services that are there.
But you got 4 more slots.
And also Project Lift. I think that's an asset for at-risk youth in our community.
I'm concerned no girls though.
There will be girls.
I've worked with them.
But I think that's a great asset. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, I'm just thinking about the service organizations that we have in our community.
Yes.
From the Masons to other organizations that are here. A lot of the churches have volunteers that do a lot of things within the community. We have the, is it Family Health Center, a center for pregnant women?
I think I saw them on the list.
So there's a lot of things in the community
that are being provided by churches and by not-for-profit organizations that I think are a great asset to our community, including Annie Johnson's and some of the others that raise funds by donations, and then they give things out to the needy in the community. We have food banks. There are a lot of things that we have that are definite assets to those that are having a little bit of a tough time in our communities.
Agreed. Thank you for those comments. Ma'am, I don't know, under this man, got
Did we already set the bike trail?
yes, we have bike trails.
And there will be campground?
Oh, I don't, you have Thank you. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I pointed over here first. I want to get out of order. Boys and Girls Club? Boys and Girls Club, thank you.
Just something that might not always be seen as an asset, but can be, is all the food waste. That's produced by schools and restaurants and community houses. It all can be composted under the proper conditions and management.
Okay,
That
thank
can be a real asset.
Such as like a community garden, community compost?
Composting, yeah, several decentralized or maybe one central composting.
So this is something that's potentially a future, not something that we would go tour when the state comes. What we're doing, it's already existing. Like I said,
I do actually operate a community composting program.
Okay.
And I have central pickup hub at Hubble's house.
Okay.
So it is something existing that can be looked at for further development.
Okay. If you can get with one of us after the meeting and give us contact information so we can put it on the list that we provide to the state, then that would be helpful. Thank you. Ma'am, thank you for your patience. I know you were on the long list of about 9 people there, so thank you.
Main asset I feel is the ball field. Is that on the Little League field? Yeah. It's had some major athletes come off of that. Football players have came off of the Little League field. We travel down a road that is unsuitable to drive a car called St. Patrick. I've been trying to get that road paved forever, but that could really use some help, and the whole community, that field is never not used. There's practice that goes on out there all the time. The season's fixing to start again. The concession stands need help. There's so many people, there was a assisted living facility that came there one year and brought the residents from the assisted living facility there. And one of the women from the assisted living facility was from the movie A League of Their Own that was still alive, and she broke through the opening pit. You know, it's just a neat place, but that is a huge asset in that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
We have Blue Run Park.
Blue Run Park? Amanda said she captured that one. Yeah.
I was gonna say, Ernie Mills Park, and the only reason I bring this up as an asset, evening jazz. I'm just, as a way to get people to come into town and stay, and when I'm done, I go eat. So,
Thank
it's a
you.
park that could be used more than what it is.
Thank you. Sir.
There is a.
Tell me your name, please. I don't.
John. There is a community garden at the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay.
That serves the whole community.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else?
One big one everybody's missing is fishing and boating.
Just in general, fishing and boating. Thank
That
you.
brings a lot of money into this area, a lot.
Thank you. And I know that, you know, on the overall list that Amanda put together, a lot of that's captured just, you know, by the businesses that she has listed there. So.
Out there.
Miss Evelyn?
Y'all can tell me what it's called in airplanes. It used to be in that contest.
Remote control. The remote control. Ma'am, please tell me your name.
District provides antique stores for a lot of people who come antique stores shopping, especially women's groups.
What's your name, please? You don't want to tell me your name.
I don't want to be.
You don't want to let I won't make you the volunteer. I'll make your friend. I don't want to assume it's your husband. I'll make your friend the volunteer. How about that? Look, he's raising his hand.
Yeah, you know, these are all wonderful ideas, and I've been sitting here thinking about, well, how could we make Dunnellon be the place for people to come as a vacation, and why don't we do something stupid, like have the biggest ball of twine in the world? or yarn, and put it on TV, and then build it as like a Christmas vacation or a summer vacation, like the movie. Like,
Stranger things have happened.
yeah, why not?
I'll take it home now.
It's just a dumb idea. Put us on the map, and all those other things up there would be side items to do. Crazy.
Thank you for your comments. Sir? Okay, we got about 15 minutes left, folks.
I'm probably, I don't know, I'm gonna say this, but I'm one of the few that was born and raised here. As growing up in Dunnellon, I could not wait to get out. There was zero to do, zero. So the youth development is huge. Because when there's something for the kids to do, the parents are going with them. Every single time. So, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Kevin, you just got a partner.
How about a movie theater?
What's your name?
Patrick.
Patrick. So again, that's maybe not one of the existing assets.
Right.
So we just need to, I know it's really tough to kind of keep the exercises separate, right? So we've got the economic development strategy where we're talking about, here are some of the things that we want to do long term, and then we have to figure in the state's involvement, which is the current things, the assets to kind of leverage to how we get to the vision. But we will make a note of that, and I
was kind of looking at your list here, and maybe 7 to 10 of those things are for anybody under 25. So, like was stated earlier, you turn 18, you graduate high school, you're gone.
So name me 3 assets that we could add to that list that currently exist for under 25.
Under 25, there is none.
There's nothing
things that aren't
currently.
being leveraged, that aren't being capitalized on.
As far as future development? Because you said what's not on the list.
Not new things, but things that are there.
Already exist.
Things that already exist. As a child, my favorite thing to do was go to Rainbow Springs and go swimming. To go fishing on the river. Go tubing down the river. That's it. That's all there is for kids.
So then
Other times I was spent walking through the woods, being a miscreant.
just give me 15 more minutes, folks.
Exactly.
And I heard what you said there. So as we move forward into making the recommendations for the economic development strategy, I've mentioned several times there will be an action plan that has short, mid, and long-term actions, and it'll be broken into various categories, one of which will be youth development is what I'm hearing. And so we will look at ways to perhaps recommend that somebody courts a movie theater. I'm not saying before anybody says, hey, we don't ever want a movie theater here, but tries to attract things for the community that really are directed at our youth, including actual development and skills development and soft skills development for the workforce and that sort of thing. But that really shifts into the next phase as opposed to this asset mapping phase.
Another thing for y'all to kind of take note of is, like I said, I've lived here my entire life. I have no idea where the Boys and Girls Club is. Zero.
So I'm going to put you on the tour. Are you going to come on the asset mapping? Okay. Mr. Mitchell. Okay, folks, we got 15 minutes.
I think one of our greatest assets are our entrepreneurs or our business folks. With that said, the economic, I forget just the term you use that the folks are going to be sent down here by. It's economic opportunity.
The Florida Department of Economic Opportunity.
Well, I just found out that the tourist development is actually going to be put under their umbrella, is what I'm understanding. So we plan to go have a meeting. One of the things that we hope to do with our business partners is bring the tourist development into town, get with our business leaders, and start developing horse, bikes, because Ocala already is miles ahead of us as I sit on that board, they already have some premier opportunities that they've taken advantage of.
Correct.
And so the director of the tourist industry has agreed to come over here. With that said, also, I think my wife alluded to it, our nonprofits, the folks that are out here, the boots on the ground, the folks that never say a word, they just go do the job. They're the ones that do the job. I heard eco, I've heard other things. Young man back there, the swimming holes. There's the Boy Scouts. There's other opportunities. It's sad unless you go out there and shake the bushes. It's sad that there's so many folks in our area that keeps our community a good neighborhood to live in. Do we have our deficits? Absolutely. But I appreciate you folks speaking up I'm pretty excited about something.
Thank you for sharing
some
that.
good folks.
Well, let me ask, who was surprised to see that list that was handed out tonight? The magnitude of what you have in your community, which I think we've supplemented already this evening with things that we didn't even capture. I mean, who was surprised by the list? A couple of you.
I was surprised that my pastor's name was not on there. Because his name is all the time. First one.
Okay, I saw a couple more hands here as we wind things out. Ma'am, I don't know your name, I apologize.
My name's Connie.
Connie.
For youth development, I think Dunnellon needs, and I think it's always needed, a vocational technical school. Because this is a rural community, not all the kids can go off to college. They need to learn a trade, or want to need to learn a trade. They got a job, Inverness has one, and they have one, it's a small town, you know? Everybody has to drive all the way over there, all the way over to Ocala to be trained, you know, all the way to.
Yeah, there's nothing, that's what I had to do in work too.
And it's not just for young people, because the vocational schools also have training for nurses, art classes, all kinds of stained glass, you know, fun things for older people too.
Right, thank you. So again, that's one of those items that winds its way into the next phase, the economic development strategy.
For the 1,800 residents, Valerie, for the 1,800 residents that we have here in Dunnellon, you know, we do have, for the young people, there is a lot, because, I mean, my grandmother was born here, so trust me, I read some of her journal. We did the exact same things that we did back in 1911. But anyway, but we do have the baseball field, we do have Pop Warner, we do have the rivers and such, but we also have, and when I used to live out of town, we'd come to Dunnellon for our Boomtown days. And that, I think, is one of our great assets. It's that hokey town. You've got the Queen of the Rainbow and the pie eating contest, but that's part of what makes that Dunnellon charm. And that, I think, it's a hard thing to get out there, because everybody does a pioneer type of day, but I think that is a great thing. And we have our Jazz Up Dunnellon.
So your festivals?
So our festivals, for a small little town, we can get, and our art festival, which we've just started, it's just, they really started going in, and again, it kind of gives that history that everybody wants us to bring back in. This was it next weekend. This weekend they're doing cracker days where they crack cracking with or. So I mean, there's a lot of neat history that we do bring. That how we get that. Only 1,800 of us live in the city limits of Dunnellon. It's hard to get that information out.
Good points. Thank you, Valerie.
You're welcome.
60 seconds at the end.
At the end. Okay. Anybody else?
I was just going to mention that a lot of the churches have youth groups in the assets on their properties. They have baseball fields and basketball courts, and if we could tap into having them work together to reach out to a lot of these youth, there might be more for them to do then as well.
We should invite, you just gave me a thought for our stakeholder, for community conversation number 3, because I mentioned that we're gonna reach out to the schools. We should reach out to the youth groups of the churches, so thank you for that. Was somebody saying something?
I'll hold my thought to the next meeting. What you just said was actually pretty awesome.
Okay, are you sure?
Well,
you can share it now.
Well, if you have all the churches as being assets, then why don't they all have gardens and then you have a farmer's market in Dunnellon?
This is awesome. This is perfect. I had this woman back here first, White.
So Kevin didn't tell you, but Kevin has a teaching farm.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's within your 2-mile radius or not, but it's got to be very close. And he's got all kinds of really neat things going on out there.
Yes, he does.
What's it called, Kevin?
The Garden Doctor Teaching Farm.
The Garden Doctor Teaching Farm. Dwight, and then we're gonna wind, Dwight, and then Dane, right? And then we're gonna wind down.
Yeah, just things, I just generically mentioned some of the really cool assets that we have. Mr. Meyer came up with one, that 9 Island Cove is, that is a magical place to walk through. Not many people know it's there, but it's my stomping ground as a kid. And we need to put that way up towards
Give a big
priority list.
We got it. Let's give it a.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I'll disclose, I've already taken one of our sitting city councilmen there and say, please, let's make this happen. Every small town in Florida wishes they had that available.
Can you tell us a little about what that is?
I mean, it's an amazing place.
Thank you.
But the other thing is, just as somebody that studies town history quite a bit, just the fact that we're coming up with a plan that's kind of unique. I know we've addressed the other ones we did in the 90s. I was here then. We didn't have the potential on the road. It was different. But it's very timely that we have this plan now, and somebody studied our town's history. We've never done things with a plan that was more than like 45 minutes. So I'd really like to thank the city staff for getting all this together and making it happen.
It's been alluded to, but it hasn't really been specified. The truly greatest asset here is the people that live here.
All right.
And I came here kind of as a substitute in '83 and fully intended to get out of here real quick. If anybody's ever seen the movie Doc Hollywood, that's exactly what this community is. It's carrying people, and I've seen them time and time again in special times of need to rise to the occasion. I won't bore you with all the details, but this community can really do great things when we're all working together, and it can be a whole lot of fun too.
Thank you for sharing those comments. Let me move on here. I got a couple more slides, I think, and then I promised you that I'd let you round it out. I'm a little bit curious. Good. Ending on a positive note. So I mentioned that the strategy, and I kind of jumped ahead, so I won't spend time on this, but the strategy is going to hopefully move you in the direction and give you some specific direction of how you can try to accomplish some action instead of just having a plan that sits on the shelf. So these are some of the things that are going to be included in your economic development strategy. It's not always typical to include a SWOT analysis, but we are going to do that. That's a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So we're going to be looking at, a little bit of a deeper drill down to kind of what we did last week, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and try and see how we can turn some of those weaknesses and threats into strengths and opportunities for you. And I've mentioned 100 times tonight that there will be an action plan, which is really what comes out of that. I was going to spend some time on the identification of community goals. I think in the essence of time this evening, I'm going to move this to our community conversation number 3, just because mentioned, I don't like to go past our allotted time and try to be respectful of your time and your family's time, but we'll talk about this in more detail next time, which is just in maybe 3 or 4 weeks.
March 12th.
March 12th.
4 weeks.
And then this is the, well, I guess if I had flipped the slide, we'd
Yeah, you'd have found out.
had the schedule right there, so March the 12th. So in terms of the asset mapping exercise, I do need to ask you to RSVP for this exercise because what the state does is tries to make arrangements for vehicles. We'll be leaning on you to volunteer to be drivers. And we need to know how many people are coming so that we can say we need 10 drivers or 12 drivers. But I need to have a general idea. So I have cards with me. I can give you my card. It's in the presentation. You can call me. You can email me. I guess my phone number's not up there, so you can't call me. But you can call city staff and RSVP through city staff, Lonnie, right? But if we could just kind of get a head count, there's always going to be folks that just show up and they recognize that. But as much as possible, if we can get a general idea of how many folks are coming, it makes it easier. And again, if there's any special requests, if we have the request for the Department of Environmental Protection to be here and the USDA to be here, that's helpful to Josh. I'll make those recommendations to him. Again, he doesn't necessarily have control over the state agencies that may or may not be available on that date, but I will put that forward to him. But as I need to, I should probably, I'll get with Lonnie and give you a date, Lonnie, for when Josh needs that, or unless he told you.
No, he hasn't said it yet.
I know he needed the asset inventory 2 weeks in advance, so maybe if we just go with the same date, so 2 weeks in advance of March 20th. So I guess by the community conversation date, if we could call it our March 12th, if we could have our RSVPs at our next meeting. Sir. John.
Patrick. You have some competition on that day. A legend of Dunnellon, Mr. Dinkins, is actually speaking that evening.
At the training.
At the training.
Between 3 and 5 that day.
He's you and Josh.
Hey, just so you know, he's the guy that wrote the book.
No, I understand. I understand.
The day the state's coming?
Yeah.
So why don't we just bring the state over?
That's
what I was saying.
That's the number one asset, right? I guess we can call Josh tomorrow. The state gave us the date and the time. We were hoping to actually have it in February, so that's. Maybe he's at Crystal River in the morning, so maybe he can flip it with Crystal River, given that. I know he's in Crystal River in the morning, so. Thank you for sharing that, Patrick. We had no idea. Ma'am.
I just wanted to share 2 little things I think are assets. Gordon mentioned cultural things. We do a thing that Sweetie's Cafe once a month. Now we're doing twice a month. It's called for Music on the Court. Some of you guys have been there, and I think it's pretty neat. The second thing I'm real excited about, on Earth Day, we're going to have a solar celebration at Rumble's house because we're the first business into Dunnellon to install solar panels. And you're all invited. There to talk to people. We're going to have some banks that do lending for low-income solar, and so we hope to get lots of other businesses to consider solar as well as residents. And we're going to feed you. We're going to have a band, and it should be a great celebration. Thank you. And I think that's a great.
Where do we find out information about that? Where's the information?
Where's the information for that deal?
I know where your place is because we met the other day.
Talk to Michelle. I'm hoping the Riverland News will be interested. And it'll be on my email list.
What date?
It's on my website. It's Earth Day, April 22nd. It's a Monday after Easter.
Just to add on that, Alice TV is now a solar provider.
You're invited.
What time?
Before we close, because I just asked,
what does Lonnie do? Not everybody here is familiar with our community development staff. And if I can ask Lonnie Smith to stand up and Teresa Malmberg to stand up, they are our community development staff. They have worked hard.
I just assumed everybody knew the legend, so I'm sorry.
And then if we could just take a minute, because they cannot do and be successful at what they do without the support and encouragement and approvals of our city council that allow them to be able to go after this grant and line things up. So, Mayor, do you want to take a minute and introduce our city council members?
Yes. Councilman White. Woman.
Anita Williams.
And, Vice Chair.
So in closing, I just want to thank all of you for your time and attention this evening. I know it's a lot of information. I thought this was incredible participation. You've again given us a lot of good feedback that we will take back and try and refine. I hope you found this a good use of 2 hours of your time, and I hope again to see you at our next community conversation meeting. You can, as always, and some of you have reached out to me between the meetings, just privately. That invitation exists. You know, feel free to do that. I know some people find it uncomfortable to talk at a meeting like this. Feel free to contact me, and I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Thank you. Good night.